All right. So Susan, if you would like to introduce yourself.
Certainly. So my name is Susan Caguyong. I am a middle school science teacher. I teach seventh and eighth grade science at a K-8 in Oakley, California. My MESA center is Cal State East Bay, which is in Hayward. And I've been a part of MESA for this will be my fourth year. And that's a little bit about me.
Great, thank you. Awesome. So I can say that we have a wide range of people. We have Washington State, New Mexico. I'm not sure where Peter's from, but we do have a good range of states here. And we know not every state is runs MESA the exact same way. But if you at any point audience member would like to share any tidbits that you have when we get to a question, feel free, because we all do structure it slightly different. All right.
Since the panel is so huge. Sorry.
It was so tempting that everyone wanted to make sure that they could go to Peter's from Seattle, so another Washington. Everyone wanted to go to the different activities. All right.
Okay.
So question one for you, Susan. What advice would you give teachers who are preparing their students for competition?
Okay, so I have two things that I wrote down. And the first one is that the rubrics are the Bible. The very first year we did MESA at our school, I will be honest, it was the COVID year where we were 100% online for my school district. And I introduced MESA to some of my students and, okay, if you want to come to this meeting during lunchtime, and I introduced the activities. And then one of my students said, wait, I saw the name of this NEDC thing. What is it? And I said, well, that's more of like a high school thing because I knew nothing about it. And she said, yeah, that one. That's what I'm going to do. So that is how I personally, as a MESA advisor, literally entered this NEDC world. Um, and so that year, 100% online, never meeting in person, um, a group of four of my students, went through preliminaries and then regionals and then made it all the way to the state California competition. Um, when I said that the rubric is the Bible for this competition, that we just kept, okay, what are we supposed to do? Oh, let's go look at the rubric. Okay, go do these things and then go back to the rubric. All right, so let's pretend we're scoring it. Okay, go back to the rubric. So that's pretty much like I would just say have copies of those, put them in your student folders. I always have my NEDC team have a folder that has all 26 pages of the rules stapled together so they can reference it at all times. So that when we're talking about, okay, we're going to work on the design brief today, okay, here we go. Because that's just, I mean, I personally like having things printed. So I just assume that that's better for my students. So we have the printed version of the rules and the rubric, and we just are constantly referring and going back to those. Those rubrics do come in handy after each competition as well, because when we get the judges' comments back and the judges' scoring, then we take a look at, well, where did we do really well, and where do we need to go back and refine. So it's just, I honestly, that's my major advice is to use those rubrics like constantly, beginning, middle, end, like continue to revisit those. We even took a look after nationals and we're like, okay, so where do we think that, if you were to go back and do it again, where could we have, kind of fine-tuned things? So that was number one. And number two, I would say is to practice the presentation skills, like as part of your MESA meetings, because that does not a skill that comes overnight. And that is huge in the MESA competition. And the team that I spoke of, they competed again the following year. And that was the number one comment by college professors, by high schoolers, by high school teachers were that they couldn't believe that they were middle school students only because they were well spoken. And then that only came from the repetition and the practice and do it again, practice, practice, practice. And so those would be my two biggest pieces of advice. It's for preparing for competition.
Great, thank you. And I will say from the
No worries.
Judge's perspective, having to go through and judge things, the rubric is really important. It's really sad when we have to disqualify a student, so that their team's whole project because they didn't do something that was in the rubric. All right, so question 2 is, what skills do you think are important to teach students for them to successfully complete their MESA project and to compete?
I personally, I wrote down public speaking again. I can't emphasize enough that that's a huge skill. I also wrote down delegating tasks and timelines with due dates, for them as a team to be able to take this humongous task and break it down into itty bitty little pieces, is a skill that a lot of middle schoolers, I speak from the lens of teaching middle school, that's a task that is not natural. It's not something that comes easy to them. So kind of modeling that, and helping them and delegating within the team, who's going to do what, and then helping them come up with, okay, today is Thursday. By next Thursday, this is what each member will have worked on to contribute to the next meeting. So that I would say delegating tasks, but also implementing some type of timeline that in the beginning, that as an advisor, you kind of create that in the beginning, and then kind of little by little kind of release that task as they kind of get, they're still going to need the, it's due in a week, those due dates, those kinds of things. I also, I'm not sure if this would probably be another piece of advice, and I did hear this from someone earlier, I can't remember who. I always pretend like the due date is a week or two prior. I do that myself with anything major that I have to accomplish. And I think teaching them that or modeling that as well, because then if it's not, something always goes wrong, with internet connection or files getting lost or those kinds of things. And with NEDC, if you don't turn things in on the right time, then it's huge deductions, or like Amanda had said, it could be a disqualification. So taking a look at those deadlines and due dates is very important.
Yes, thank you. And the fact that you talked about public speaking twice is important. That's something the kids often say, is that they if they didn't have practice or they hadn't had the opportunity to practice, that's what they wish they had practiced on, because there's a lot of especially when we get back to in-person, there's a lot of in-person pieces, and they just have to be able to communicate their project to everyone. And that's a key role both in MESA and in real world. So thank you. All right. Let's go. Question 3. So what impact has MESA had on your students? You can kind of take this, I'm sure you have some thoughts, but you can also take this in terms of, are any of your students now pursuing STEM as a career path after, when they go to, now that they've seen MESA and gotten maybe a little bit more interested in STEM? So go either direction.
Well, as being a middle school teacher, they haven't gotten to college yet, so so I can't speak beyond that. But I can say that for a lot of my students, that because at our school we are such a small K-8, there's a total of 250 middle schoolers on our site. And I have the 7th and 8th graders, but it's just for science. We don't have a STEM class. It's all after school for our MESA program, and I know that many places are fortunate enough to have the extra time. but I do know that for many of my students that MESA is the first glimpse at what STEM is. And I can't remember the rest of your question, but I do know that the team that I was speaking of earlier did compete as seventh graders and then eighth graders, and they are planning to compete again. A team of four, three of them are at the same high school, and one of them is at a different high school. And there'll be two teams that I know of that will be the kind of split competing in the future. So as far as that's kind of hopeful. I mean, I'm not, or that's not the right word, but that they are continuing with MESA. As far as impact, what did I write for my notes here? I can say that not just from the NEDC, but from all the competitions, I really think that it embeds confidence in our students with public speaking, but also just with the, I did that. Like I finished that and I competed, even, it's not about winning. It's just about taking part in the process. But I also think that there's a lot of community building with the students and with the school and with MESA. And I've seen just that confidence, just that's the biggest one. Like I've seen it from the group that I had the chance to work with for 2 years. Like it just builds and builds and builds as far as what they think they can do. And I'm just talking in circles. So
Yeah, no, that's good. I appreciate it. And your girls were in the student panel, we're talking about how MESA did impact their, school choices, their course choices, what they're thinking about to do later on. So it's, MESA has definitely made an impact on their lives. All right, so now we're going to open it up to audience question and answer. So I put the Slido link in chat again, but we did have one new person. So let me go ahead and put it in the chat again, just in case they didn't see it. All right, so feel free to go in and type your questions in there, or you can come off mute. I'm going to stop sharing those so we can just see everyone. And then let me pull up the Slido. Let's see it. Great. All right, so does anyone want to come off mute and ask Susan a question? You can ask me a question too if you really want to.
Hi, this is Kim in New Mexico. Thanks for sharing your voice, Susan. I was curious about project-based learning and if you had any other classes or clubs beyond your MESA experience, or just your thoughts on it in your school district or your situation.
In my particular situation, I have incorporated some of the other MESA activities into my my full class. So for example, in California, we have a moon-based competition. I'm not sure if you are familiar with that, but it's building using cardboard to protect an astronaut. And that activity, like I kind of try to embed some of like at least one activity into seventh grade and one into eighth grade. But as far as project-based learning, I have not done that in my classroom. No worries.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Kim, for the question. So we got a question over here, and it's, how did you help your students come up with their project ideas? And this is a good question because for anyone who's new this year to MESA, the challenge is a very open-ended challenge, and that is kind of purposefully done that way. But it is a little overwhelming when it comes to having to choose a project idea. So Susan, how did you help your students?
In the very beginning, we have like a big brainstorming where that's their homework for the week. Is not homework, but after a MESA meeting, to go home and write down all of their ideas, and then we kind of chart them and discuss them all, and go back to the NEDC page that has the paragraph that describes that what's thin inequity, find a group in your community, and, kind of talk about all of their ideas and kind of find, kind of narrow it down to one that they all think would be a good idea. Both years that they competed, I will say that it was an idea that was brought on upon the needs of a family member. So the first year, they designed a device to help someone that had ADD, because one of the students in the group had a sibling that really struggled with that. And then the second year, they designed a device to help someone detect heat stroke. And that was also from a familial experience with someone having symptoms of heat stroke. So I hope that helped with that question, kind of making a big list and then discussing and seeing which one goes and fits the parameters of a need in your community.
Good. My computer is being slow, but I'm actually trying to see if it will open. I don't know why it's not opening. There is the 17 goals of the UN sustainability goals, which are, let me copy the link, which are something that we talk about in our curriculum committee for MESA that we're going to start implementing a bit more. But so they're meant to be, they're global goals, but they can definitely help you focus locally. So if you have students who aren't sure what they want to focus on, you could show them these 17 goals and see if there's one that stands out as an interest to them. It has it spans like no poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, things like that. They're a good way for the kids to kind of focus on a topic area, and then they can go from there. And so if you are having challenges with your kids figuring out where they want to go, this is a good starting point. I actually add this into the documents for Maryland just so that they have it as an option to help figure out what they want to do. All right, good answers, good questions. Let's see, let me go back to the slide. Any other questions? So audience, I'm going to ask you a question. How long have you all been doing MESA? Are any of you brand new to MESA this year?
I'll go ahead and start. I'm not brand new. I was a MESA teacher for 2 years at Spokane School District, Shadle Park High School. And then I got the opportunity to become the high school coordinator here in Spokane. Been doing that for 14 years now.
Oh, nice. And Janice has been an advisor for 5 years. Good job.
So, hi everybody, Peter from Seattle. I was a MESA student here in Seattle at Garfield High School. And then that was back in the 90s. And then when I graduated college, I worked for MESA for a few years, and now I'm back as director. So it's kind of my third stint with MESA. But I came back in 2019, and so I'm still looking forward to my first MESA day. So I'm excited about, to learn more about how all these projects work, because I haven't had a chance to go through an actual live, in-person action plan of this. So thank you for all the help.
Thanks. Jack he's halfway through his first year, so we can give advice to Jack. Hi, Jack. Jack, there's welcome to ask any questions. There is a Slido for this group of 2. I'll post it because I know you probably can't see it since you came after I posted it. But you're welcome just to ask the question. All right. So, Jack, since you just arrived, I was going to say we have Susan as our panel member, but you're welcome to ask me any questions. So Susan is a MESA facilitator, and then I work for Maryland MESA as like the program specialist. So I deal with more of the high level areas. So I can give some aspects from working on the NEDC committee and the curriculum committee, and how the projects and the judging and things work.
Do you prefer if I submit questions? Well, I should ask. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
You can ask, it's fine. Small group.
So I asked this. I asked this the group of students in the first session, but so first year doing MESA. I wasn't, and this is only my second year teaching too. So I'm very new to just everything generally. And our office report is also totally new. So we're definitely in a position where I just need a lot of advice about stuff. So I guess what's some of the stuff that you think, what's some of the strong foundations what are some of the strong foundations that I need to start building here as the advisor?
Do you have weekly meetings, or how is your MESA club set up?
We meet once a week, and right now most of what we've been doing has just been preparing and practicing for the challenges. So I've been there. I've been there to provide supplies, give, I guess, critique and support, and just I guess most of what I've been doing is just asking questions, like not necessarily telling them to do anything, but just asking, okay, what do you think about how this is happening? Why do you think this is happening? That sort of thing. But that's kind of where I'm at right now, is just been getting them what they need to try the challenges, and hosting it weekly, and just providing some light guidance where I can.
I myself have weekly meetings as well. My NEDC groups come on the weekly meeting, but I also meet with them separately once a week, just because of the intense parameters of the NEDC competition. During my weekly meetings, I have each competition working at table groups together. And I usually do some kind of opener activity, either it's some kind of game or some kind of STEM activity with the whole group. And then they work. Right now, they're just starting to actually work on their competitions, because I've learned from the past that if they don't get their lab books done before they're given materials, then those lab books are like a last minute thing, and they either don't get finished and they don't get turned in. And last year's quite a few groups either turned in their work late or didn't finish their lab books, which is a huge deduction on their competitions. So that's something new that I have implemented this year, which is if you're not up to point X in your lab book, then we don't start the building and if you don't get up to the point in your lab book where it says, this is what I'm going to be building with, and this is what these are the 3 prototypes that I think might work, and this is the one I'm choosing to build first, then, that would be my biggest advice, is to have them really do the research, really do the planning, and then move forward. That would be my biggest advice as far as running your meetings.
Yeah, my when I say competitions, I don't necessarily mean the national engineering design competition quite yet, because I'm still very much trying to figure out how to approach that, and trying to find time to handle it, and finding time this year has not been easy. The competitions we've tried so far are just the more kind of basic fun ones, like straw tower building and the aluminum boat. I'm not sure if other states do those, but they're some of the competitions within Utah, at least. I guess, so it sounds like, so when you mention the lab book, are those resources that I can find in the competition guidelines, or?
So Jack, I'm gonna pop in real quick and just say,
Is that a California thing? That
yeah,
might be a California thing.
yeah, so each state sort of sets up MESA a little differently. So some are it's a school-based club, some it's a community-based club, some are overseen by universities, some are overseen by other entities. So everyone does it slightly different. In California, they have a lab book. However, Jack, I will say, if you having like an engineer's notebook or a lab book of some sort to help the kids organize, that is a great way to start. I know one of the projects I made for my school districts is this year is I made an engineer's notebook that was a physical notebook, because I know high schoolers may be able to use the computer more to generate their ideas and save their ideas on it. But we have elementary school in Maryland. And so the middle school and the elementary school want to more hands-on draw things out. So I created an engineer's notebook. So
I guess
you can do
I guess I
anything
could
with that.
I guess I could try that out with the next smaller competition they have coming up,
Mhm.
where I just get like a small notebook for everyone that they can bring and write down their plans and their project iterations and all that kind of stuff.
If you haven't already, so either using Invention Ed or the engineering design process are good ways to sort of break down those steps, because they both kind of do the same thing, where they're going to basically have the kids ask the question, what are they trying to do? And then like go through the process of the design process. And then also, as we all know with engineering, anything, it has a space in there to redesign, because they might have to redesign their project several times before it actually gets to an iteration that works. And
Okay.
so pick whatever way you want to do it. We sort of talk about Invention Ed a lot in MESA, but then it's also at the core is the engineering design process. Like I said, similar, sort of like the scientific method or scientific process. It's, step by step, just kind of gives the kids a scope and sequence, if you want to say, of how to work through a project. And it can be used for small projects, like your small competitions that you're doing, or larger ones if you get to NEDC.
Okay.
Yes, you can keep going with that. And I'm also going to just pause really quick and say, Rina's here. She's our other panelist member from New Mexico. So she also might be able to pop in with some questions. And we can also have her answer a couple of our starter questions after we finish with Jack's question.
Again, and
I
I'm
could
sorry,
pop in real quick.
I'm not trying to monopolize anything here.
Yeah. No, hey, Jack, I think, like I say, somebody that's first year, we all like to help people that are first year to help them build what they're doing and gain confidence in what they're doing with it. I just wanted to let you know that we use these folders here. They use the 3-prong tabs, if you can see that. And I build a notebook for each of our teams with copy the guidelines, lined paper for notes, and graph paper for drawing up their design work. And it's just a basic starting notebook for them to kind of get their ideas down and kind of keep track of what they do each day, because they can really use that information when they're talking about their project. And that could be on any kind of project that they're doing too,
Okay.
not just the NEDC.
I'll give that a trial run here for our next smaller competition and see see how I can use it.
All right, I'm just gonna allow Rina a chance to answer some of the couple starter questions that we had. And while she's talking, you can think of if you have any other questions. So I had, so Rina, if you want to tell us what advice you would have to give teachers for preparing students for competition, if you'd like to share your thoughts.
Hi. Yes, the first thing that I do for sure is to make sure that students are, oh, hold on. Are aware of the handbook. So they need to make sure that they read the handbook. That's like the first thing that we do. It's just like I tell the students all the time that if you don't know the handbook, then you're not going to be prepared for whatever, you know, you need to be able to do. They need to know the handbook better than the judges. That's what I tell them. Like, if you don't know the handbook better than the judges, then you're probably not going to do well. So that's what I tell them. They need to read it forwards, backwards, left, right. And that's the first thing that we do to get ready for the competitions. That's like the biggest advice that I would give the advisors.
Are you speaking of the guidelines, the NEDC guidelines?
Yes, the handbook for the MESA USA competition, which tells you the rubrics, and especially look at the rubrics. So the rubrics for each of the different parts, the pitch, the interview, the poster, everything. Something that we like to do is when we look at the rubric, we like to put like kind of like an agenda and like a timeline so that the kids can do each thing that's on the rubric at a certain time to make sure they have everything.
Thank you. So what do you think are some of the skills that are really important to teach the students to successfully complete their projects and actually go to a competition?
Well, they have to be able to work together well as a team. So something that it's not really something I teach, but it's something that I look at. Like I tell the kids, when you pick your team, make sure that you have somebody that's good at speaking, somebody that's good at programming, somebody that's good at the engineering part, the building, and somebody that's good at writing for sure. The writing one is very important because they have to do their poster and their brief. But the skills, I have a MESA class, so we do a lot of the Arduino lessons. During that class, I teach Arduino and microbits. So those are some of the skills that they have already. But also, I think their motivation, there's the students' motivation, you know, they have to be motivated to want to do it and want to do their best because they're the ones that go out and look at things and research things. So they have to want to do it. And I think that's the biggest thing. If they don't want to do it, they're not going to.
Thank you. And then what impact has MESA had on your students?
Well, MESA has had a great impact on all my students. I've had throughout the years. I've been doing MESA for 12 years. This is my 12th year doing MESA. So right now I have students that are in college, some that have graduated. And I know that a lot of them always tell me that they want to do marketing or engineering because of MESA. So I think that they were impacted in choosing their careers. I think that's the impact that it's had. But they also made a lot of friends and they had a lot of fun.
Great, thank you. All right, so let's we can go back to any questions. So Rina, just so you know, we have a lot of experience on the call right now, but then we also have Jack, who's in his first year of MESA and his only second year of teaching. So any advice that we can think of to help him along, that's great. He's in Utah, so his is structured a little bit differently. They have a handful of mini challenges they do, and then they build up to kind of doing the NEDC challenge. So he's right now in the process of doing some mini challenges. That's the conversation you walked in on, was us suggesting him having like an engineer's notebook or a lab notebook to help the kids focus on their plans. And that's kind of a recap of where we're at. So now, any questions for our panelists? Any others? Let's see. Let me think if I can come up with one. When your students have joined MESA, was MESA the first experience into anything STEM for your students, or were most of your students already interested in STEM when they joined? Susan or Rina can answer, or both.
For many of my students, it's the first exposure they have to anything STEM other than, their science or their math classes. And at my site, as I previously stated, we're an after school program. I've been trying so hard to make it a class, and my principal's behind it, except that our schedule is just weird. I teach 3 sections of 7th and 3 of 8th, and there's just no room in my schedule. So it's one of those things where it's a dream, it's a wish, but it hasn't come to fruition at my site, unfortunately.
For me, my students, we have the MESA class, so we have that, and right now we also have Project Lead the Way at our school. This is our first year doing that. So yeah, they have some engineering like background to want to do this, but there are a couple of students in my class or in my school too that have joined the club that have no background in STEM. So it ranges.
Have you found that your students who have little or no background in STEM find that STEM is interesting after they join MESA?
Yes, I've had some students that have never had any, background in STEM or like to do anything like that, but then after they join MESA, they really enjoyed it. Sometimes the students will join MESA because they want to go on the trips. That's like the big thing. But then afterward, they end up liking, the STEM related fields, and they end up doing something. And some of them like want to do marketing. That's one of the big ones too, because of the speaking part of the competition. They really enjoy it.
I could say that the students that have gone through the NEDC process are very much the careers in computer science and engineering are now on their radar. They even they speak of that when asked questions when they were on panels, even in our Cal State East Bay, when people are asking them. So it definitely does have an impact on them. And in case anyone out there doesn't know how to code or use any of the computer software, because I know nothing about coding, I'm just going to be honest and throw that out there. I wanted to make sure that doesn't deter you. YouTube is amazing. And I will say that both years, with some support from our art/computer teacher at school, that he would consult with them occasionally when they would ask, they were completely self-taught, and it's just amazing. Once they get that bug, they were able, and that was the success of their team, is that they caught the bug, and they just oh, what about, how can we do this, and how can we do this? And when getting them ready for nationals last school year, the students got to the point where they wanted to add an app, because when they were at state the year prior, they had seen that some other groups had added the app, and they consulted with the college professor, and he just got real quiet in the beginning. It was like, so this is very similar to what my college students are doing for their final project of their class. Like that blew them away too. Just that's how they had worked on it themselves, but gotten up to that level where they were doing things that were comparable to students who were taking a computer science class in college, which is just amazing. So just a little glimmer of hope that if you don't know how to code, as long as you're there to support the team, they can go great places.
And I will say something that I added into some of our Maryland ones, but we're actually sort of utilizing them for the national curriculum too, is we're talking about code.org, because code.org has a lot of, and there's others out there as well, but code.org is one that's a good spot to help kids, scaffold those kids who may not know a lot about programming and coding. It also will help the adults. So it has a curriculum built into code.org. You can utilize it also to build apps. It has an app lab and things like that. But if you just use it for the curriculum side of it, it's actually really comprehensive, and it kind of goes from the real beginner, which they have it for like the kindergartner, but I also listen to those because I also know nothing about code. And then you keep working your way up, and eventually you can meet with the high schoolers. So it's a great way to help scaffold those lessons in coding in your MESA programs. All right, I think we answered our question over here. Okay, any other questions? We've about 10 more minutes.
Somebody had asked about resources, I think.
Okay, yeah.
I started with the Arduino with the Alegu Uno kit. The Alegu Uno is like kind of like a knockoff brand of the Arduino. It's got a kit and you can get it on Amazon. And I bought some for pretty much like a class set for the kids to use, but it comes with like 20 something lessons and it builds off each one. The first one is like the blink lesson. And I really liked it because it pretty much tells you like step by step how to do the wiring and the code. And then it even explains like the parts that are in there, the components that they have to use for that lesson, and then it'll even give you the code for it, so you don't even have to be a programmer to know how to do that. And so that's one of the things that that I do in my MESA class. The Tinkercad, I also use Tinkercad. With Tinkercad you can like simulate with the Arduino and also the microbits, so you can do the drag and drop the blocks, and then like you can change it from blocks to text so that you can get the text code. And then from there you can like copy and paste that text code so that you can use it on the Arduino like programmer, so that you can program your board. So those are a couple of the resources for like programming. The Alegu Uno, it's EELEEGO.
And the one nice thing about NEDC, the NEDC competition is we took out the requirement for having a microprocessor, but even if you want to use one, it's totally fine. And you can use any one. There isn't a requirement that you have to use a specific one. So whatever your school district is teaching or whatever you can get your hands on, because supply chain issues have been has been part of the issue for the past couple of years with getting the different microprocessors. You can get to any of those different resources. We also use the Alegu in Maryland because it's easily accessible on Amazon. All right, anything else? I guess if there isn't a specific question, I can also open it up to any last bits of advice that you would give anyone. And we can start with the panelists, but if anyone from the audience also wants to give any last bits of advice on how to help your students succeed, you're welcome to share.
Just more on this kind of the outcomes from like the National MESA competition, the NEDC. I've had a number of students that have come back to me and said, I thank you so much for having me do the interviews and the pitch and those things where I'm presenting in front of others, because I've had to use that a ton in college and other places. And the scientific posters have also been another one that's been helpful for them. So you could speak to it that way too, as saying this is not just something that you'll use for this, but whether it'll come in handy when you're in college or at a job, you'll probably have some type of chance of presenting.
Any other last thoughts? We still have like a few minutes.
Somebody had asked about when I start. I start in like the end of December, January, but only because I do a different competition at the beginning of the year, Best Robotics. So I think that also gives my students a chance to kind of practice as well, because they have a marketing presentation, they have an interview that's part of that competition as well. So it really does help to do some other competition that the kids can get practice with and get like comfortable. And then you can start to see like which kids are going to be good together, you know, to put in a team, or like for them to kind of think about what team they want to be in. But for a new advisor, starting in January would probably not be a good idea, because it's a lot of work. And so yeah, I think it would probably be best to start early as much as you can to like get the lessons for the kids to be able to do the programming first, or like learn how to do that if you're going to do a microcontroller on your project, and then like start thinking about what inequities there are in your community, so they can start like researching that and start looking. One of the places that you can find a lot of good things are like on change.org, or even on like the news. That's where we looked for last year, and that's where the kids got their idea about doing the smart fire alarm, because in the news they started looking at the news and in their community, and they saw how 6 mobile homes burnt down this past summer. So, or like the summer before they did their project. So I think that's a good place to look for ideas as well.
Thank you. All right, any other thoughts? I'm happy to give you back 5 minutes if you we don't have to just sit here. But I want to leave it open for anyone to ask any other questions, share any other thoughts. All right, I will go ahead and stop recording. You're welcome to